Chapter 1627. When Ling Hanxue came in, she didn't say who wanted to see Chu Yang. This meant that she respected Chu Yang. I don't need to use my seniority to suppress you. Chu Yang was somewhat touched. Not for anything else, but for this respect. After all, Chu Yang's sudden increase in strength was still a top secret. Based on Chu Yang's strength that day, it was impossible for him to reach the peak of the world. It was already a rare and commendable attitude for the Ling clan to give him such respect at this moment. As soon as Chu Yang finished speaking, the elder standing outside smiled gently. His voice was as cold as the northern cold wind. He said slowly, "Ling Muyang from the Ling clan. Greetings to the current tribulation sword master." Huang Xiaoliu and all the other experts of the Huang clan felt as if they were struck by lightning. They felt dizzy and almost couldn't believe their ears. Ling Muyang from the Ling clan. He actually came in person. What did this name represent? It was enough to scare people out of their wits and shatter their souls. This name was one of the founders of a big clan. The name of the ancestor of the Ling clan. The previous generation's tribulation sword. Ling Muyang learned swordsmanship when he was 3 years old. He killed people when he was 5 years old. When he was 7 years old, he could already fight against a martial king with a sword. He hated evil all his life. He walked the martial world and killed people. Among the ancestors, the one with the heaviest killing intent was this Ling Muyang from the Ling clan. But in the entire martial world, the most respected person was also Ling Muyang from the Ling clan. Ling Muyang never killed the innocent. Eradicate all the injustices in the world, and kill all the people in the world who deserve to be killed. This sentence had always been Ling Muyang's motto. It was also his standard of conduct in the martial world. Chu Yang raised his head and stared at him. Outside, in the endless world of ice and snow, two sharp gazes shot straight in and met Chu Yang's gaze. Two people, for gazes, met in midair and made contact with each other. 81W 81 net, world-defying heavens at this moment. Even Ling Hanxue, who was standing at the side, could clearly feel the sword aura in the air. It was as if 4 peerless swords had collided with each other. Just by looking at each other, the faint sword aura scattered in all directions and actually cut the surrounding air into pieces. He actually used his gaze as a sword, and the sword light tore through space. His might was so uniform, and it was truly shocking and terrifying. One old and one young, two peerless experts of 2 generations. Before they even had a chance to exchange words, they were already pointing their swords at each other, fighting with all their might. Could it be that a great war was about to break out? Everyone suddenly felt a pressure as heavy as a mountain, suddenly assaulting their hearts. In a flash, the sword chi that filled the air collapsed with a sudden sound. Everyone felt as if a meteor was falling from the sky. Vanish! Chu Yang retracted his gaze. Then he looked down and remained motionless. Ling Muyang also retracted his eyes at the same time. He slightly closed his eyes, and then opened them again. He looked deeply at Chu Yang, and said in a cautious and heavy voice, "Tribulation Sword Master, you're indeed worthy of your reputation. If my eyes aren't blurred, Sword Master Chu is a sword supremacy, and he has already reached the ultimate grade. Such an achievement is not only shocking, but also inconceivable." There was a hint of horror in Ling Muyang's voice. Being a sword supremacy was nothing out of the ordinary, and it didn't matter if he was a low-grade supreme martial artist. The problem was Chu Yang's age. Ling Muyang had never seen such achievements at such a young age. He didn't even think about it. One must know that Ling Muyang was more than 10,000 years old this year, and he was only slightly older than Chu Yang, who was in his 20s. No one knew that Ling Muyang's words had caused a huge shock to Ling Hanxue. Sword supremacy? An ultimate grade at that. Ling Hanxue almost fell to the ground at this moment. She suddenly turned her head dizzily, and her beautiful eyes looked at Chu Yang in disbelief, as if she was looking at a prehistoric monster. Ling Hanxue had been with Chu Yang for a period of time, and she thought that she knew Chu Yang's strength very well. Although Chu Yang might have improved in the process of their separation, no matter how much he improved, so what? After all, it had only been less than a year. However, Ling Muyang said that Chu Yang had already reached the ultimate grade. Not only could Ling Hanxue not doubt this, she couldn't even doubt it. But what kind of promotion speed was this? Wasn't this too fast? When she saw this guy before the medicine banquet last year, he was an emperor grade. And a monarch grade? Of course, with Chu Yang's age, it was already rare for him to have the strength of a monarch grade. However, in just a year's time, he actually skipped so many levels and directly rose to ultimate grade. And sword supremacy at that. A super tyrannical existence that could surpass all practitioners of the same level. This is a monster. Ling Hanxue thought incredulously. Is this real or fake? Obviously, she shouldn't doubt the elder's judgment, but she still couldn't help but doubt it, because this was too unbelievable. She even hoped that Chu Yang would deny it. She would rather the elder make a mistake than believe that this young man had achieved something that others couldn't achieve in one, or even several generations. But Chu Yang's following words completely destroyed her hope, and also made her completely dumbfounded. Elder Ling really has good eyesight, to be able to see through my current progress at a glance. This mere achievement is not worth mentioning. Chu Yang raised his head calmly and smiled slightly. Elder Ling has come from afar. Can you give me some face and let me have a drink? Just now, when he lowered his head and slightly closed his eyes with Ling Muyang, he actually took the opportunity to eliminate the damage to his eyes caused by Ling Muyang's invisible sword aura. Both of them were well aware of this. Their current strength was just about the same level. Maybe Ling Muyang was a little stronger, but definitely not by much. That was the reason why Ling Muyang said middle rank utmost exalted. That was because that was precisely his current realm. Okay. Ling Muyang strode forward without hesitation. Huang Xiaoliu and the Huang clan's experts all felt a sword full of murderous aura coming out of its sheath, carrying endless sharpness. It turned into a human figure and walked forward step by step. An indescribable illusion arose spontaneously. To them, the person in front of them was clearly a sword, a peerless divine sword with endless sharpness. Everyone subconsciously felt a burst of pain on their skin. It seemed that they had been cut by the sword aura. Ling Muyang walked to the door step by step. The two Huang clan's supreme martial artists on both sides of the door had long been intimidated by his aura, and involuntarily took 2 steps back. Then they felt that it was not enough, so they took 2 more steps back. But they still felt that the sword aura was still coiling around their throat and other vital parts, so they simply took 3 steps back, and another 5 steps back. Bang! Their backs leaned against the wall at the same time, or it would be more appropriate to say that they bumped into the wall. After taking 12 steps back, they were actually forced to the walls on both sides of the courtyard. This bump actually caused the walls to shake for a while, and they almost fell down. How could a mere wall block the retreat of a Supreme Being expert? There was no other reason other than the fact that the 2 Supreme Being experts had long focused all of their mental strength, martial power, and physical strength on that completely traceless, yet clearly sensed sword energy. That collision only had the strength of an ordinary person. Although the momentum of the collision was swift, in the end, it was still unable to knock down the wall. The 2 of them were overwhelmed with shock. As the saying goes, the layman enjoys the show, while the expert appreciates the skill. Although the 2 of them couldn't understand Ling Muyang's realm, they still understood that the current situation was probably because Ling Muyang didn't deliberately target them. Otherwise, even if it was just a normal aura, as long as he exerted his full strength, second-grade supreme martial artists like them would definitely be crushed to death by his aura. If he deliberately wanted to kill someone, he didn't even need to make a move. He could easily kill them with a glance or a breath. Breath formed into a sword gaze sharp. Although it was a legendary technique, the person in front of them definitely knew it. These 2 people, are they your people? Ling Muyang asked calmly. No. Chu Yang smiled. He understood what the other party meant. These 2 people were really too weak. Chu Yang looked at them playfully. He knew in his heart, Ling Muyang was showing off his strength? Or, back down. Ling Muyang didn't turn around, but only lightly shouted. Several experts of the Huang clan only felt that their chests were violently shaken, and they almost spat out blood. They didn't dare to disobey, and retreated in panic. They instantly disappeared without a trace. This little Ru. Ling Muyang looked at Huang Xiaoliu and frowned. This little guy doesn't look good. and his cultivation is trash. At most, he's a little stronger than ordinary people. How can the Tribulation Sword Master have such a friend? Even if such a person recommends himself as a servant, it's shameful. He's really too inferior. I'm Huang Xiaoyou from the Huang clan in the southeast region. Yes, Senior Ling. Huang Xiaoyou didn't know why, but when he was looked at by the other party's very ordinary gaze, he suddenly felt as if he was already dead. A creepy feeling arose spontaneously, as if doomsday had arrived. He was so scared that he almost peed in his pants. Seeing Huang Xiaoyou in such a pathetic state, Ling Muyang glared at him and said, "What qualifications does such a trash have to listen here? Back down now." Chu Yang frowned, but he didn't stop him. He only said lightly, "Senior Ling, you're so impressive." Ling Muyang stood in front of him and said coldly, "Oh, wherever I'm, there will never be an enemy of mine." Chu Yang said coldly, "I believe that you're the same. But now, relying on your own strength, do you think that you can bully others? Bullying a young man, I don't know if it would make Elder Ling feel better?" Zhang Tai said. "Will it be very pleasurable?" Chu Yang suddenly raised his head. His gaze was like an arrow piercing through the air. "Presumptuous." Outside, the other 7 people of the Ling clan shouted in unison. Everyone looked over with an unfriendly face. "Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to your ancestor like this? Do you really think that you're so great just because you're the Tribulation Sword Master? Presumptuous." Chu Yang slowly shifted his gaze and drank back the tea. His gaze was cold and constant, like a vulture staring at its prey. "Who do you think you are? How dare you speak to me like this? Of course, the Tribulation Sword Master is great. Do you want to have a taste of it?" In an instant, the originally relatively calm atmosphere suddenly became hostile. Not to mention the fact that they were facing a great enemy. Even if they were going to lose their heads in the next moment, they still had to take a deep breath first. "I just want to fight for it, can't I?" Ling Muyang's eyes lit up as he said indifferently, "Today, if you insist on doing this, I'll give you a chance. In that case, a battle is unavoidable." Chu Yang sneered. "Oh, is that so?" Ling Muyang said solemnly, "If you and I fight today, no matter who wins or loses, it will definitely trigger a great battle between Tribulation and the Ling clan. The final result will either be your defeat or my Ling clan's destruction, or both sides suffering great losses. No matter what the outcome is, it will cause the strength of humans to be damaged before the battle against the extraterrestrial demons. We will definitely lose the battle. All living things in the world will fall into the hands of the demons because of this battle. At that time, the demons will rule over all living things, and all living things will fall into oblivion." "Sword Master Chu, are you still sure about your persistence?" Chu Yang's lips revealed an extremely cold smile. "Even if it's like what you said, so what?" Ling Muyang couldn't help but feel a little stunned. He really didn't expect that this Tribulation Sword Master would be so tough. Even when facing himself and the common people of the world, he still did not back down a single step. His attitude was very obvious. If you want to fight, then fight. A more straightforward way to put it would be, who's afraid of who? Now that he had met such a troublemaker, and this troublemaker had great power to influence the overall situation in the future, Ling Muyang couldn't help but feel a big headache, even though he had cultivated for thousands of years. He originally came to test Chu Yang's temper, and Huang Xiaoyou was just a tool. But he didn't expect that because of this tool in his heart, it seemed that he was going to make a fool of himself. "Tribulation Sword Master, what do you want?" Ling Muyang asked solemnly. "It's very simple, as long as you apologize to him." Chu Yang said coldly, "If you make a mistake, you have to bear the consequences. There are some things that can't be discussed if you're not willing to compromise." At this moment, everyone doubted if they were hallucinating. Chu Yang actually asked the ancestor of the Ling clan to apologize to a playboy. Ling Muyang almost fainted from anger because of Chu Yang's request. "He actually wants me to apologize to Huang Xiaoyou? Bastard, apologize to him? Who does he think he is? Does he deserve it? Does he deserve it?" A Ling clan expert at the side couldn't restrain his anger, and finally couldn't help but scold Chu Yang. Chu Yang's complexion immediately sank. His body, which was originally sitting upright, suddenly moved, and a series of afterimages suddenly appeared. Ling Muyang frowned, but didn't make a move to stop it. He only watched Chu Yang's movements with rapt attention. One ray of cold light pierces 10,000 feet. Chu Yang shouted in a low voice. He used his hand as a sword, and 10,000 cold stars scattered out. The other supreme martial artists of the Ling clan were immediately blocked outside. When they rushed back, Chu Yang had already shouted in a low voice, "What's the harm in slaughtering the whole world?" Everyone's movements froze again. The 7th grade supreme martial artist of the Ling clan, who spoke previously, couldn't move at all. He looked at Chu Yang's slender fingers in horror, and cold sweat poured down his head. There was only an icy cold feeling below his throat. Chu Yang's 2 fingers had already gently pinched his Adam's apple, and his strength had yet to be released. He believed that at this moment, as long as anyone had the slightest movement, Chu Yang would be able to crush his Adam's apple immediately. In the next moment, the tyrannical force would completely destroy his brain. At this moment, no one would be able to save him in time. No means or tricks would be effective. "Sword Master Chu," Ling Muyang said in a low voice. Chu Yang completely ignored this. His hand was still as steady as a rock. He stared coldly at that supreme martial artist of the Ling clan, and said slowly, "Who do you think you are in front of me? How dare you shout at me like this?" This supreme martial artist of the Ling clan was already so ashamed and angry when he looked at Chu Yang's eyes. But at this moment, his life was in Chu Yang's hands, and he really didn't dare to move at all. He had just scolded Huang Xiaoliu as who does he think he is? Now karma actually came so quickly. Being questioned by someone else, who does he think he is? And his situation was 10 times more humiliating than Huang Xiaoliu's. At least Huang Xiaoliu was still free, but he was already under someone else's control. He was so ashamed and angry that he didn't want to live anymore. But he didn't dare to commit suicide, because if he risked his life now, he would die. But the consequence would cause the Ling clan and the Tribulation Sword Master to break off on the spot. And the situation in front of him was already clear. The Tribulation Sword Master didn't care about breaking off. But the Ling clan couldn't not care. It was related to the lives of the world. The Ling clan couldn't bear this responsibility. "Sword Master Chu, what do you want?" Ling Muyang took a deep breath and asked. Chu Yang didn't turn back. His fingers were still holding the Adam's apple, and he said lightly, "Elder Ling, that move just now is the Tribulation Sword technique. The name of this move is, what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world?" Chu Yang smiled strangely and said word by word, "I believe Elder Ling should have heard of this move before." Ling Muyang only felt a sense of suffocation in his chest. Chu Yang's real intention of saying this wasn't to explain the so-called Tribulation Sword technique, but to reiterate his previous words. The lives of the world? So what? With the Tribulation Sword in my hand, what harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? It's indeed a good sword technique. It's fierce and domineering, and it's impossible to guard against. Ling Muyang said in a low voice. Haha. Chu Yang slowly loosened his grip. He turned around and went back to his seat. Then, he picked up the wine jar and poured the wine into it. Then he slowly said, "Actually, you can kill people in this world as long as you have the ability to do so. But don't underestimate people. Some things can't be done. Some consequences are very serious." After pouring the wine, he raised his head slightly and looked at the supreme martial artist of the Ling clan. He said lightly, "Do you understand?" The supreme martial artist of the Ling clan blushed and said angrily, "You." Chu Yang said coldly, "You still don't understand? I'm talking to your ancestor. The Ling clan shouldn't be so ill-mannered." He rolled his eyes and said lightly, "I'm really a little disappointed. The rumor of the Ling clan is actually not true." Ling Muyang took a deep breath, turned around and shouted, "You all can leave first." Wait. Chu Yang didn't give in. "The matter just now isn't over yet. You insulted my friend in front of so many people. Now you have to apologize in front of so many people. It's better to pay back what needs to be paid back as soon as possible." Ling Muyang's face twitched. Testing. All right. Now the temper of this Tribulation Sword Master was completely tested. But who would have thought that this young man was so strong? So tough. This time, Ling Muyang really couldn't back down. The 7 experts of the Ling clan gritted their teeth and glared at Ling Muyang. At this moment, as long as their ancestor gave the order, these 7 experts would rush up and fight with their lives. They didn't care if he was the Tribulation Sword Master, second-grade supreme martial artist, or sword master. They would kill him first. Ling Muyang pondered for a while, took a deep breath, and said to Huang Xiaoyou calmly, "It's my fault just now. I shouldn't have used my divine sense to suppress you. Please don't take it to heart." As soon as he said that, the eyes of the Ling clan's people turned red, and they almost cried. Huang Xiaoyou was stunned, as if he was struck by lightning. "I only said one thing. Dharma Supreme, are you an extraterrestrial demon?" At this point, Ling Muyang's tone became very strange, as if he was very sad and helpless. It was also very melancholic. Chu Yang took a deep breath and asked, "What did they say?" Ling Muyang paused and smiled bitterly. "What do you mean? He might as well tell them how he did it." The 2 of them immediately flew into a rage and only said one sentence. "Your great clans are the real heavenly demons. You brazenly made a move to try and keep me there. Speaking of which, the strength of those 2 people is still a distance away from mine. After a bitter battle, they have already used their full strength. You still can't do anything to me. I originally thought that they were just persuaded by the Dharma Supreme and weren't really accomplices." Just as he was about to leave, he didn't expect the 2 of them to suddenly change their tactics. Black chi rose from their bodies, and it was actually an extremely evil power. This old man can determine that it was heavenly demonic chi. Although that aura wasn't very strong, it was essentially the same as the day when the sky turned dark and the heavenly demon injury left on Shi Pao Xiao. After Ling Muyang finished speaking, he took a few deep breaths. It was obvious how shocked he was. "I think Elder Ling is very shocked. Originally, there were only the Dharma Supreme and heavenly demons, but now, even many ordinary people of the heavenly layer have been demonized." Chu Yang pondered and said in a low voice, "Yes. Moreover, the speed and scope of demonization is quite fast." Ling Muyang was very worried. How many days has it been since the Dharma Supreme issued the summon order? The cultivation of those 2 people are only second-grade supreme martial artists. If even they have been demonized, then how many law enforcement officers have been demonized? "How was that battle?" Chu Yang asked. "I had no choice but to kill them." Ling Muyang's mood was obviously very gloomy. It didn't feel good to be forced to kill one's best friend. However, those 2 people had already become demons. They had to be killed. Chu Yang sighed deeply. "Big clans, didn't you try to spread the news that the Dharma Supreme is a heavenly demon?" Ling Muyang smiled bitterly. "What do you think? Do you dare?" Chu Yang said, "Are you afraid that once you spread the news, you will become the enemy of all law enforcement officers in the world?" "Of course," Ling Muyang said. "The law enforcement officers have followed the Dharma Supreme for more than 10,000 years. Do they choose to believe the Dharma Supreme or us? Anyone can imagine the result of this choice." Chu Yang sneered. "But if you don't say it, won't you still become the enemy of all law enforcement officers in the world?" Ling Muyang was stunned. "You said that the Dharma Supreme will take the opportunity to attack the big clans." Chapter 1633. This is the Tribulation brother of the Tribulation Sword Master. They also said that the Dharma Supreme is an extraterrestrial demon. Then, maybe it's not slander. What kind of person is the Tribulation Sword Master? How can he simply frame others? That's true. Some time ago, the Dharma Supreme also said that Chu Yang is an extraterrestrial demon, and even personally gave the order. Now we know that Chu Yang is the Tribulation Sword Master. Now the situation is reversed. The Tribulation Sword Master said that the Dharma Supreme is an extraterrestrial demon. Indeed, how can the Tribulation Sword Master be an extraterrestrial demon? Since the Dharma Supreme is lying, then the situation is obvious. Why did he lie? Because he's guilty. Why is he guilty? He's an extraterrestrial demon. How can he not be guilty? He can only bite back. The new public opinion was almost one-sided in favor of Chu Yang's side. This was, of course, the people of the big clans who reacted after the chaos and began to cooperate with Gu Duxing and the rest. Baidu searched to see the latest chapter. Once such a statement came out, and the argument was one-sided, it instantly turned the whole world upside down. It was already about to turn the world upside down, but now it really did. Tribulation had always been a legendary existence in today's world, who had seen it with their own eyes. Now it really appeared in front of them. This kind of shock was simply unparalleled. Wow. Wow wow. Tribulation. Oh my God, my God. This is the legendary Tribulation. No wonder he has such powerful skills at such a young age. This matter is really confusing. So handsome. So this is the legend of Tribulation. So handsome. Boo-hoo, I must marry him. This was a love-struck girl. TSK, with this face of yours? Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror? You can only find someone like me. Get lost. Go to hell. How can Tribulation lie? Even Tribulation said that the Dharma Supreme is an extraterrestrial demon. There must be a reason. Yes, yes. Everyone be careful. Mo Ching Wu's red clothes fluttered in the northeast direction. Her dreaming of a gentle dance saber flickered with a dreamlike luster. Her figure looked like a dancing fairy, but it brought out a dreamlike murderous intention. In front of and behind her, it was full of blood. On Mo Ching Wu's face, there was a strong sense of reluctance, but he didn't show any mercy. Last, when facing an enemy, if you can kill them, then kill them as soon as possible. At the very least, he had to immobilize him. Don't hesitate. These were the words of second brother Mo Tianji. Don't forget that you're not alone. Ching Wu, I only have one thing to say to you. The only enemy that poses no threat is a dead man. He had to protect himself well. If you get hurt again, then I can only follow you. These were Chu Yang's words. I will never let Chu Yang bear this burden for the rest of my life. This was Mo Ching Wu's warning to herself. I want to be his helper. I don't want to be his burden. Never. In the north, Gu Duxing and his sword were unstoppable. The Lone Ranger was dressed in black and had a cold expression on his face. The black dragon sword danced in the air. The blood-red light under the sword was like brilliant peonies. Just as they were about to bloom, they suddenly encountered a warm spring breeze and bloomed one after another. A few killers who had charged forward madly could only see figures flying forward. Then at an even faster speed, their heads flew off from their necks. One by one, the corpses fell to the ground like wooden stakes. Gu Duxing attacked. He attacked. Fast, accurate, steady, and ruthless. Sure hit. Sure death. There wasn't any nonsense at all. Gu Duxing gave a sword strike to anyone who didn't accept the previous remarks and pointed their swords at him. There was no turning back from this sword strike, and he set off for the Yellow Springs. It was only when he had just arrived here that he chose to say some words of advice when there were many people around. Since then, second old Master Gu had never opened his mouth again. He started to face challenges with a straight face, just like a cold-faced killer. No, he was actually a cold-faced killer, and a super one at that, because this guy seemed to be even more agile than the most professional killer. Every strike of his did not miss. Even when someone shouted out Tribulation's identity later on, Gu Duxing's expression did not change at all. His gaze did not change at all. Anyone who dared to charge forward was killed mercilessly. There were no exceptions. He was like a piece of ice from hell, cold and merciless. Wherever he went, he would bring about a massacre. At this location, at this time, whether it was the law enforcement officers or the big clans, both sides were accumulating their own strength. They would not send super experts here to join in the fun. Therefore, Gu Duxing was like a dragon returning to the sea, or a tiger returning to the deep mountains. He moved back and forth in the crowd without feeling threatened at all. Speaking of which, there were not many people in the world who could be a match for the sword supremacy, who was already a supreme martial artist. How could someone with such skills appear in this kind of situation? This cold-faced killer's appearance, and Gu Duxing's handsome appearance, immediately made the hearts of many young women in the martial world ripple. Of course, Gu Duxing himself would not feel anything. It seemed to be the same for the young women. So cool. So handsome. If I can marry him, I will not only have to spend a night with him. This was a young woman in love. He looks very strong. I don't know. Is tribulation so strong? He's so charming. This was the thought of some young women. Chapter 1634. Mo Lei followed behind Dong Wuxiang, her black clothes fluttering in the wind, as if she was taking a leisurely stroll. With Dong Wuxiang around, there was really no room for Mo Lei to make a move. Dong Wuxiang's aura had already protected his wife tightly. Anyone who came from the front would be dealt with a single slash. If someone came from the back, fine. Just one slash, and the saber chi would disperse, and the person would be dismembered on the spot. Following that would be the suppression of divine sense, and the person's body and soul would be destroyed. Discussions about the tribulation finally started. Dong Wuxiang's side had already cleared the area. There was no other reason other than the environment at Dong Wuxiang's side was a little too bloody. The ground was stained with blood and flesh. Dong Wuxiang's majestic figure stood at the center, his tiger-like eyes sweeping across the faces of the surrounding people expressionlessly, intimidated by his domineering aura. Everyone who met his eyes couldn't help but look away. No one dared to meet his gaze. It was dead silent. Only the fresh blood from Dong Wuxiang's saber dripped onto the ground. For a moment, the thousands of people around actually didn't dare to breathe loudly. It was really too bloody and too shocking. With a poof, Dong Wuxiang stabbed the black saber in his hand into the ground. Instantly, a circle of dust rose from the ground and rolled towards the surroundings. With one hand on the saber and the other on his waist, he shouted in a deep voice, "The Dharma Supreme is the extraterrestrial demon. This is what I said. Who says he isn't? Stand out." This shout made everyone around him take a step back in unison. At this moment, who still dared to say no? Perhaps there were still die-hard loyalists, but compared to immediately losing their lives if they denied it, these loyalists were smart enough to keep their mouths shut. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. As for the other fence-sitters, their reactions were the same. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. The Dharma Supreme is the extraterrestrial demon. If you say so, then so be it. Yes, yes, yes. If you say he is the extraterrestrial demon, then he must be. He must be, he must be. If you say he is, then he is. If he isn't, then so be it. Boo-hoo. I was scared to death. Ha 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 ha. Dong Wuxiang looked up to the sky and laughed. For a moment, he was filled with lofty sentiments. He shouted again, "Everyone recite with me. The Dharma Supreme is the extraterrestrial demon. Defeat the Dharma Supreme. Chase all the extraterrestrial demons out of the heavens. Kill the Dharma Supreme and the extraterrestrial demons. Who doesn't? Speak louder. If you think about it, you will live. If you don't, you will die." Those who were still alive were all smart people. So thousands of people shouted together, feeling the atmosphere of the Azura slaughterhouse. Once you're demonized, there's no turning back. There was no need to hear him say anything. Some of the women who were already smitten by Xie Danqiong's beauty were already frantically echoing him. No matter how big the world was, handsome guys were the most important. Such a handsome guy was really pleasing to the eye, but also tempting to the heart. One by one, the infatuated women with red hearts in their eyes fought to be the first to shout, "The Dharma Supreme is the extraterrestrial demon. The Dharma Supreme is the extraterrestrial demon." They followed behind the handsome Xie Danqiong, killing gods and Buddhas in their way. Even the master of calculation and manipulation, Mo Tianji, probably didn't expect Xie Danqiong to actually use his beauty on such an occasion. Although it was unintentional, it was definitely passive. But it still attracted bees and butterflies. What a monster! Could it be that handsome guys were really that amazing? Ao Xieyun and Rui Butong, a dragon and a phoenix, were also unwilling to be left out. Naturally, they also stirred up huge waves of blood. For a moment, the roar of dragons and phoenixes, the roar of swords and sabers, viburnum flowers bloomed all over the sky, and the sounds of dogs howling incessantly, extremely loud and clear. Tribulation made his move, officially appearing in the heavens. It was just the first time he made a move openly. The whole world was turned into a pile of mud. The whole world completely started to become chaotic, And it was still escalating. The news about the Dharma Supreme being the extraterrestrial demon, through the joint efforts of these 8 parties, began to spread endlessly. There were those who were angry, those who were skeptical, those who were secretly delighted, and those who were ready to fight. Some were looking for the dead. All in all, the various facets of life were revealed in full at this moment. There were also some people who weren't from big clans or law enforcement officers. They didn't participate in the battle at all, nor were they angry or doubtful. They just kept on gloating. Never doubt that there really was such a group of people in the world. As long as someone was unlucky, they would be happy. If that person was famous, they would be even happier. If the person involved could reach the level of the Dharma Supreme, they were so happy that they were bursting with joy. Motherfucker, aren't you supposed to be very impressive? You've been impressive for a full 10,000 years. Finally, you've been messed with for once. Haha, this feels so good. Let's hurry and see how the situation is developing. What exactly is going on? What the hell has it got to do with me? Dharma Supreme? With me? Tribulation? He's not my biological father either. He can do whatever he wants. It's just fun. It's really fun. It's always been law enforcement officers messing with others. This is the first time I've seen someone messing with law enforcement officers. And it's the boss of the law enforcement officers. This really makes me happy. What? Battle? Why? I'm not going. I'll just watch from the side and see who will win in the end. Ha ha ha. The Dharma Supreme has been pushed into a shit bowl this time. Ha ha. This guy is really unlucky. It had to be said that such people made up a considerable portion of the population. People who only wished for the world to be in chaos, who would open their mouths and gloat at other people's misfortune, were not lacking in any place in this world. There were people who harmed others without benefiting themselves, no matter which world they were in, and there were usually quite a few of them. Damn it, there were even more of them around us. At this moment, it had completely become a pot of messy porridge that had been cooked to a pulp. However, the killing was still going on. Tribulation was still going all out, as if he wanted to wash the place with blood. The big clans also gradually joined in. And at this time, it was probably only the big clans who were in charge of various areas, who saw that the situation was favorable, and acted on their own accord to cooperate. The real order for the big clans to provide support had not actually been issued yet. If the big clans really cooperated fully, the momentum before their eyes would probably be several times greater. And Chu Yang's goal was to blow this matter up as much as possible. The more intense, the better. It would be best if it spread throughout the entire heavens. That would be the most ideal situation. In the secret chamber of the Yi clan. Pa. Pa pa pa. Several teacups fell to the ground one after another, smashing into pieces. Some of the teacups fell from their hands, and some of them were too shocked after hearing some news. Their hands and feet trembled, and they touched the teacups on the table and smashed them. Your news, is it true? The ancestor of the Yi clan, Yi Chunshan, sat stiffly on the chair. He raised his head in shock, and looked at Ling Muiang opposite him. His eyes almost popped out of their sockets. If there were no eye sockets blocking them, they might have shot out. Xiao Qinyu's hands were tightly clenched into fists. He placed them on the table, and his face was flushed with excitement. Shi Paoxiao had not recovered from his serious injuries. At this moment, his emotions were fluctuating, and he could no longer keep his breath steady. He coughed violently. Ling Muiang. Cough cough. Cough cough cough. This. Is this? Cough cough. The more anxious he was, the more he coughed. Zhuge Songchong and Chen Yingfeng were not in a good mood either. They were panting heavily, and their eyes were fixed on Ling Muiang, waiting for him to speak, to confirm the authenticity of this news. His mouth was tightly pursed as if he was swallowing something. His tall and straight body was trembling, from light to intense. It could be clearly seen that he was restraining himself, but he couldn't. Instead, it became more and more intense. Autumn opened her mouth, as if she wanted to laugh happily, but she almost cried. She hurriedly shut her mouth, but her tears had already fallen. The others were also so excited that they almost couldn't control themselves. 10,000 years, a whole 10,000 years have passed. Yi Qinshin's voice was hoarse and low, and he couldn't speak properly. All the old brothers felt a wave of sadness wash over them. The descendants of heroes' calamity. This was their glory, but it was also where their pain lay. In his childhood memories, his father was an indomitable figure that could support both heaven and earth. His heroic spirit was unparalleled. His hero was invincible. He swept the world. He descended into the world. He was omnipotent. However, he left long ago. No one knew where he went. There was no news of him after he left. He only left behind an eternal legend in the heavenly layer continent. Why did the big clans resist the Calamity Sword Master? On one hand, it was naturally to ask for the continuation of the clan. No one would be willing to see their clan, which had been passed down for countless years, be destroyed. However, there was another reason, and that was, if their clans were destroyed, who would spread the praises of Lord Father's great achievements? This was the foundation that Lord Father left behind. The foundation that he left behind for me to protect. We will protect it with our lives. One day in the future, when we meet Lord Father in the underworld, we can also have a clear conscience. Today you have appeared once again. However, it was already 10,000 years later that the world had changed. Cough cough. Cough cough. Sob sob. Shirpali coughed repeatedly, as if trying to suppress his agitated emotions. However, in the end he really couldn't help but cry. Lord Father. When Lord Father left home that day, it was still midnight. At that time, I was sleeping, and Lord Father secretly kissed me. I was already awake then, but I deliberately didn't open my eyes. I regret it so much. Why didn't I open my eyes? 10,000 years. I have regretted it for 10,000 years. From then on, Lord Father left and never returned. However, that morning, the feeling of Lord Father rubbing against my face was unforgettable. Shirpali burst into tears. But now Lord Father's foundation, the Shir clan, has been completely destroyed. How can I face Lord Father now? His words hit the nail on the head, and everyone silently shed tears. There was a long silence. For a moment sighs, sobs, and cries were all mixed together, and it didn't calm down for a long time. Now, since we already know the whereabouts of Lord Father and the others, we naturally have to look for them, charge up the Heaven Imperial Court, increase our strength along the way, and go to the outer realm to fight the extraterrestrial demons together with Lord Father. Autumn wiped away her tears and shouted proudly. As the saying goes, brothers fight while fathers fight. Zhuget Songqiong said solemnly. Lord Father and the others have already fought for 10,000 years. It's time for us to share some of the burden. Therefore, this encirclement of the heavenly demons this time is the first battle against the extraterrestrial demons in the future. We must not lose. Ling Muyang said solemnly. Everyone's eyes lit up, and they nodded solemnly. Amidst the joyous yet sorrowful atmosphere, someone suddenly heaved a long sigh, his voice bleak and sorrowful. Everyone turned to look. The person who heaved a long sigh was Xiao Qinyu. For a moment, everyone's hearts sank. They actually didn't know what to say. Xiao Qinyu turned his head away, and then lowered it deeply, as if he had committed a crime. His entire spirit seemed to have collapsed. Qinyu. Yi Qinshin called out solemnly. Xiao Qinyu shuddered all over. He raised his head, his eyes lifeless. With a tragic smile he said, all of us are still fine. But what about Uncle Li and Uncle Lan? When I meet all the uncles, what should I say? Lan Buhui is already dead. But Li Chuanbua was forced to his death by me. I forced him to his death. He smiled tragically, blood flowing from the corners of his mouth. What should I do? How can I face my Lord Father and all the uncles? My younger brother is already dead. I even forced Chuanbua to his death with my own hands. How can I face Uncle Li? Everyone fell silent together. Yes, this was undoubtedly a dead knot. A dead knot that couldn't be untied. Xiao Qinyu raised his head and smiled tragically. Human kinship is really strange. Her. In the past, when our fathers were still around, we were also like brothers. Because everyone knew that our fathers were brothers who had gone through life and death together. Even if we weren't brothers, we were even more like brothers. It was the same for our father's generation, and our father's generation. Therefore, everyone felt that we were on the same side, brothers of the same generation. It's a pity that our father's generation went missing. So we started to gradually drift apart. Yes, our father's generation was gone. And we were all busy with our own things. The emotional ties between our father's generation in the past were broken. Therefore, we slowly started to not treat each other as brothers. We started to suspect and plot against each other. Slowly we became strangers. Slowly we actually became enemies. The last chapter was doubly updated. It was finally done. A huge rock was also lifted from his heart. Today's last chapter, Xiao Qinyu's words, are also my sentiments. When my grandparents were still around, it was lively and lively. More than 30 relatives got along very well. Ever since the elders passed away one after another, the house also gradually became deserted. None of us did anything wrong. But many relatives seemed to have drifted apart just like that for some inexplicable reason, and then disappeared. This seemed to be how human relationships worked. The elders maintained kinship while the young developed new kinship. As the elders passed away, the kinship also followed suit. Although this was the way of the world, it was indeed worth lamenting over. Chapter 1636. Everyone was ashamed as they listened to Xiao Qinyu's sobbing words. Everyone's faces were full of discomfort. That was the truth. Finally, some things have reached the point of no return. But at this time, it was said that our fathers are still alive. So everyone felt that the distant relationship suddenly became close again. Xiao Qinyu raised his head abruptly, his face full of tears. He roared at the top of his lungs. But how can the dead come back? Li Chuanbo was forced to death by me. Forced to death by me. Am I still human? At this moment, Xiao Qinyu was almost crazy. He was on the verge of breaking down. The brothers stood there in a daze, completely not knowing how to console him. That was the truth. All along, kinship in the world seemed to be maintained only by relying on the relationship between the elders. As the elders grew old and passed away, in the first few years, they still exchanged information. Slowly, it changed to once every few years, once every few decades, and then once every few thousand years. After a few thousand years, there were even more conflicts. As for 10,000 years later, they finally became enemies. Baidu searched to see the latest chapter. They could not live under the same sky and could not coexist in the same lifetime. However, the strangest thing was that at this time, they still found out that their fathers were still alive. It was as if at this moment, the bonds of friendship in the past had returned, and they all felt close to each other. But what had already happened in between? How should they face the irreversible things? How could they make up for the sacrifices that had already been made? At this moment, any consolation or explanation would be of no use. It would only add on to Xiao Qinyu's burden. When the kinship of the older generation that united them was gone, as they grew older, their hearts would gradually fade, and their greed would continue to grow. It was a very normal thing for them to do things that hurt each other. Everyone had done it before. Who could console who? Let's leave the painful things of the past to the future. The plan now. The only way is to completely destroy the Dharma Supreme and the heavenly demon. This demonic disaster has yet to be eliminated. What right do you have to talk about other things? Ling Muyang said coldly. Everyone nodded. But, after the ecstasy of knowing that their fathers might still be alive passed, everyone felt that there was a lot on their minds. They were like children who had done something wrong and were about to be reprimanded by adults. All of them started to feel uneasy. Admittedly, Xiao Qinyu has done something wrong. But don't tell me you guys didn't do anything wrong too? Even he knows how to grieve. What about the rest of you? Ling Muyang said coldly, Yi Chenshen. The destruction of the Li clan, the killing of Chuanbua, the entire plan was controlled and pushed by you from behind the scenes. Could it be that you don't have any responsibility at all? There was also the matter of Uncle Jun's family. Yi Chenshen, Zhuget Songqiong Chiningfeng. Don't you feel ashamed? If I meet my parents in the future, I'd like to see how you're going to explain yourselves. I'll be able to fully explain what you've done. Ling Muyang's words could be said to be impolite. Every single one of his words exposed everyone's scars. It was extremely ruthless. However, the faces of Yi Chenshen and the others all twitched, but no one retorted. They looked at each other and sighed. These were all facts. How could he refute that? After a long while someone finally spoke. With a sneer, Chen Yingfeng said darkly, "To us, this matter is indeed a huge regret. However, we're not the only ones who feel this kind of discomfort, right? Don't the Tribulation Sword Master and the rest feel the same? What are they feeling discomfort about? Make yourself clear." Ling Muiyang's eyebrows were already about to rise. He really couldn't understand what tribulation would feel discomfort about. The previous generations of tribulation, needed to destroy the big clans established by the previous generations of tribulation in order to complete their work. If our parents didn't die and are still fighting against the extraterrestrial demons, then it's highly possible that the previous generations of tribulation didn't die either. If they're all still alive, then don't they have an irreconcilable feud between them? The tribulation of the next generation is the biggest culprit who destroyed the descendants of the previous generation of tribulation. This has been the case for the past 100,000 years. Severing their bloodline, severing their heirs, this is an irreconcilable enmity. Whether it's the current Tribulation Sword Master or the previous generations of Tribulation Brothers, they probably didn't have a good time when they went up, right? Chen Yingfeng sneered. "Nonsense. Bastard." Ling Muiyang flew into a rage. "We're talking about our own business now. Why are you talking about other people's business? Do you think your discomfort will be relieved when others are suffering? Bastard. What kind of bullshit attitude is this? Can you be more shameless? You're harming others without benefiting yourself. What the hell?" Chen Yingfeng blushed and said, "I'm just analyzing. I'm just stating facts." "Bullshit." Ling Muiyang was furious. "You just said that the next generation of tribulation was the culprit who destroyed the previous generation of tribulation. If you want to talk about this discomfort, didn't our parents suffer it? Didn't they also kill the descendants of the previous tribulation and destroy their clans before going up? You bastard, you're cursing your own father? Isn't that right? You're just stating facts, aren't you?" In an instant, the surrounding people looked at him with hostility. These few sentences of Chen Yingfeng seriously incurred the wrath of the crowd. That's how everyone gets old. It's fine if you're cursing your own father, but you're cursing my father as well? Are you courting death? Yes, actually, that's not what I meant. Chen Yingfeng was completely flustered in an instant. He waved his hands repeatedly and nodded and bowed. Sweat even appeared on his face. "Bosses, I really didn't mean that. I'm just stating facts." "Really? You're still talking about the facts? Then please tell me, what exactly do you mean?" Yi Chunchen questioned. "You're such a troublemaker. When will you change that temper of yours that harms others without benefiting yourself? You've been like this since you were young. You're always gloating over others' misfortune. You don't let others have a good time, even when you're suffering. You never learn your lesson. This fellow needs to be taught a lesson." "Exactly. Beat him up." The old fellows rubbed their fists and surrounded him. Chen Yingfeng knew that something was wrong. He let out a strange cry and was about to escape when Ling Muiyang punched him in the face. His face immediately turned red, and everyone swarmed him in an instant. Bang bang. Puffed. They really hit him. Although they didn't kill him, they still hit him hard. It was fine as long as he was still alive. It had been a long time since they ganged up on him. North of the capital, on a certain road about 1,000 miles away, an old man and a young girl were walking over. The old man was an old man who looked like he was out of this world. Judging from the way he swaggered on the road, he must be a person who had read a lot of books and poems and was jealous to the bone. As for the young girl, she was a peerless beauty like a pearl. Along the way, 3,000 people turned their heads to look at her. This Tianding convention will definitely be very lively, but the Dharma Supreme must have other plans. He's very ambitious. Yes, Master. I think the Tianding convention this time must be brought forward by the Dharma Supreme and the extraterrestrial demon. I'm afraid there's a great mystery behind it. Yes, Master. This old man is rather interested in that Tianding convention. Really, Master? From the looks of it, the scale this time will definitely be much grander than the previous years. But why are there so many people? It seems a little too many. I'm afraid there's something else. Yes, master. But can't we leave quickly? No, this old man hates seeing your big brother. If I can see him later, then so be it. In short, it's better to see him later than earlier. It's best if we can see him later. Master, why are you like this? What's wrong with my big brother? My big brother is much more handsome than you, master. He's brave and knowledgeable, chivalrous and gentle, courageous and benevolent. Cough cough stop. There are more ignorant people over there. Disciple, you should practice your skills in poison. That's what you should do. So boring. There aren't any experts. What kind of practice is this? What a waste of good medicine. Just as they were talking, there was already someone with a sword at his waist. He walked over valiantly with a face full of self-admiration. This little lady greets you. Of course, this was some ignorant fool who wanted to pick up girls. He saw an old man and a young man walking on the road like this. The old man was too weak to stand up to a gust of wind, and the young one was like a willow branch swaying in the wind. No matter how he looked at it, they didn't seem to have much martial strength. He was really lucky today to have met such a little beauty, with no one to protect her. Looking at her travel-worn figure, she actually didn't get robbed early. He was really too lucky. It must be said that this person's observational skills were really good. He could even observe the two of them on their long journey. But he didn't think deeper. How could such a beauty, who came from afar, not have any ideas? If they could, why would it be his turn? This fellow probably didn't expect that today was definitely not the day of his ancestors. Instead, it seemed like there was black smoke rising from his ancestors' graves. Hopefully, he already had children or uncles, so that his family's future wouldn't be ruined. Because he actually picked up Miss Heavenly Poison's head to pick up girls. How could it be good? Get the hell out of here, you bastard. Hurry up and get lost, as far as you can. I don't want to waste time with you. Chu Luer, who was anxious to see her elder brother, asked her master to speed up but wasn't allowed to. Naturally, she was filled with anger. Seeing that this fellow actually came over to tease her, she was even more furious. However, Chu Luer wasn't a bloodthirsty person, so she only reprimanded him. Oh, little lady's temper is quite bad. I like it. That person was about to reach out and touch Chu Luer's pretty face. The next moment, that hand had only reached out halfway, but it already started to turn black from the fingertips. Then, his fingers turned into the color of ink, and it quickly spread all the way up. Chu Luer's eyes were filled with killing intent. You don't want to get lost. Then go to the gates of hell. I won't send you off. Southeast Chu clan. Ever since Meng Charan arrived at the Chu clan, he had basically become Yang Ruolin's guest. This is the extraterrestrial demon exterminating the world. Perhaps the end of the world is coming. How can Meng Chaoran speak of it so casually? Wasn't he a little too calm? For a moment, Father Chu couldn't help but admire his son's master. Look at his magnanimity. This calmness. Only such a person could have taught such a monstrous talent like my son. Just by looking at the disciple, one would know the master. It has been like this since ancient times. The ancients did not deceive me. It's just that I haven't found seniors Feng and you, so I don't know where they are now. I don't know if Master Meng Chu Failing was a little worried about this. He was afraid that it would delay his son's matters. After all, Senior Feng and you were peak experts in the world. If they were to help him, it would undoubtedly be a great help. You can rest assured about this. The two of them have left long ago. According to my estimation, it's very likely that they have already left the southeast region. At most, they'll be a day's journey away from the capital, Meng Chaoran said lightly. A few days ago, news of the extraterrestrial demon came, and they couldn't sit still. This time, they definitely went out secretly because of this matter. With them and Chu Yang's brother's strength, I believe that the big clans won't sit idly by. In this way, other than the law enforcement officers, all the strongest forces under the heavens have already joined forces. I believe that they will be able to deal with this extraterrestrial demon extermination. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Meng Chaoran concluded. His tone was very certain. Chu Failing and Yang Ruolan were slightly relieved. But Meng Chaoran's next sentence made them want to strangle him. Speaking of which, if the strongest forces under the heavens are also defeated, then it'll be the end of the world. Everyone is doomed to die together. There's no point in worrying. Meng Qiaoran said lightly, "That's all." Yang Ruolan and Chu Feiling were stunned. Meng Qiaoran's first sentence was that he was in heaven and had unlimited imagination, as if he was already preparing a celebratory banquet for his son's triumphant return. But the second sentence was that he had directly fallen into hell. There were even 18 levels of hell, the end of the world, and everyone was doomed. Just when they wanted to catch this guy and denounce him, they saw that Meng Qiaoran had already walked out lightly, leisurely and confidently. His bearing was extremely calm. It's better to let the Chu clan make some preparations. Chu Feiling made up his mind and walked out immediately. How can the clan that the Tribulation Sword Master came from not make some gestures? Even if it's a drop in the bucket, they should show some attitude. On a road leading to the capital, there were two people in snow-white clothes. They walked at a leisurely pace, their speed seeming to be slow, but was actually very fast. Chapter 1638. That person's eyes were as black as ink at one moment, and as white as snow the next. His face was ferocious, and his muscles were spasming as he struggled to maintain his last shred of clarity. However, it was obvious that they were having a hard time holding on, and could collapse at any time. Once their last shred of clarity was gone, they would no longer be upright law enforcement officers, but demons who wreaked havoc in the human world. There were hundreds of people inside and outside, all of them former colleagues who had fought together for a lifetime. How deep were their relationships? However, at this moment, it was as if no one had heard him, and there was no reaction at all. There were also people whose eyes were shining with a cruel gleam of pleasure. The evil aura had completely affected their hearts, turning their hearts into cold iron stones. They were completely indifferent to the miserable state of their comrades, who had fought side by side with them in the past. They were extremely cold and indifferent. A cold voice came from the treetops. "Shut up." It was the Dharma Supreme's voice. In the thatched cottage, all the struggling and cursing suddenly disappeared. The demonic soul had long been devoured by the Dharma Supreme. As long as these people were not killed by accident, even if they wanted to die or commit suicide, they would have to get the Dharma Supreme's permission before they could do so. As long as the Dharma Supreme did not agree, he could continue to control their spirits and manipulate their actions. Even if they wanted to die, they could not. Once he told them to shut up, no matter how unwilling they were, they would have to obey the Dharma Supreme's orders involuntarily. Perhaps the word obey should not be used, but obey. Having lost their spirits, they were just puppets to the Dharma Supreme. Ping Xiaoyan clenched his teeth tightly, tears streaming down his face. He slammed his head against the wall violently. Endless regret made him feel as if he was better off dead. If I had known, why would I have participated in that damn test? After giving up everything, he finally realized. When he gave up, he actually gave up on his soul and his conscience as well. He would be consigned to eternal damnation. The remaining bit of kindness in his heart, as well as the perseverance of 20,000 years, was still making its final struggle. However, he also knew that he couldn't struggle for much longer. At any moment, he would completely collapse and completely fall into the devil's path. On the treetops, two figures in black stood quietly at a high point. One had long hair fluttering in the wind. He was the Dharma Supreme. The other had a black cloth covering his head but was evil. He was the heavenly demon. Both of them spread out their divine senses. He checked the situation in the capital. Those people are all scolding you. Moreover, their ability to organize is quite strong. But now there is still one last problem that I don't understand, and that is the path of the heavenly demon, or the path of advancement. The heavenly demon laughed. Advancement is actually not difficult. You just need to do this, and you can gradually improve, step by step. Our cultivation is completely different from the bullshit cultivation of the human race. Yes, I remember. I really remember all of it. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said, "My lord, how much of your demonic body has recovered? Do you need me to reign in some more soul power?" The heavenly demon nodded in satisfaction. "You are filial. My injuries have already recovered by about half, and my disrupted cultivation has also recovered to 10% of its peak. Haha, although it's only 10%, it's still not something a middle-grade supreme martial artist can bear. If I had more soul power, I would be able to recover even faster. However, in this trashy plane, it's hard to find high-quality soul power, so I can only use quantity to supplement the quality. The Dharma Supreme nodded. I will go and collect the soul power now. The heavenly demon said. Go. The two people who went earlier are already our demonic seeds. If they don't come back this time, there is no harm in absorbing their soul power. If I can devour the demonic seeds, I can recover faster. This time don't neglect it. Okay. Understood. The Dharma Supreme's eyes flashed and he left. Seeing that the Dharma Supreme had left, the heavenly demon revealed an extremely evil smile. Just as he was about to enter his room, he suddenly frowned and looked to his right. Letting out a cry of surprise, he transformed into a wisp of black smoke and leaped away. On the road about 100 miles to the right of this small village, there was a team that was advancing hurriedly. There were only a total of 7 people in this team. The leader had one big eye and one small eye, one eyebrow pointing to the sky and one eyebrow pointing to the ground, one ear pointing to the front and one ear sticking to the back. To have such a strange appearance, it was naturally only the Lord Tan Tan of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. The short and fat man beside Tan Tan was Guigu. The other 5 people were all elders of the 3 Stars Divine Clan. This time, Tan Tan didn't let Xia Damfeng accompany him. Heavenly demon destroying the world? There was actually such a thing. This news made the great demon King Tan very angry. In this world other than me, who else is worthy of being called a demon? Now some heavenly demon has actually popped out. This is totally fucking unreasonable. Chapter 1639. On top of that, this matter was related to senior brother Chu Yang. Therefore, during this period of time, great demon King Tan, who had already reached the peak of 2nd grade supreme martial artist, had set off for this place. While they were on the way, Tan Tan's gaze suddenly focused. He said, "Stop. Something doesn't seem right." Guigu stopped in his tracks. "What do you mean?" Before he could finish his sentence, extreme shock suddenly came over his face. Looking at the black aura that had suddenly appeared in front of them, he murmured, "What pure demonic aura? Who is this? Could it be?" Guigu's heart was beating rather fast. Could it be that he had just arrived at the capital, and he had already met the person in question? It seemed like his luck was too bad, wasn't it? Kiki, what a delicious delicacy. To think that it has delivered itself to my doorstep. A strange laugh came from the black aura. A salivating voice said, "Not bad, not bad. My luck is really not bad. To actually encounter a legendary supreme demonic body in such a trashy place. If I can eat this fellow, my cultivation will definitely be able to recover to its peak in an instant, and even improve greatly. Meat pies falling from the sky are nothing more than that." The moment this voice came out, an unprecedented sinister and terrifying pressure also spread out along with it. In an instant, it covered an area that covered the entire place. Tan Tan, Guigu and the others exchanged a look. They could all feel that this fellow's strength was really beyond their imagination. They really didn't expect that such a strong expert actually existed in this land of the heavens. Such strength was enough to make even the extraterrestrial demons sigh in admiration. This admiration had nothing to do with race. It was just a form of recognition of his cultivation. Tan Tan took a step forward. His eyebrows had long been knitted together. With his hands on his hips, he said, "Where did this evil demon come from? To actually dare to play tricks in front of me, the great demon king. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and come out to greet me, the great demon king." Tan Tan was used to calling himself the great demon king. Today he had met a real demon. Yet he had raised his status by another level, from big to great. Upon hearing that, the heavenly demon let out a strange laugh. The ink-like black aura swirled, and a black-robed man suddenly appeared in front of Tan Tan. His eyes narrowed, he licked his lips. He said, "Little, where are you from? How dare you call yourself the great demon king?" Tan Tan grinned and said, "Son, I'm your father." The heavenly demon flew into a rage and shouted angrily, Bullshit. Although your devil body is quite suitable to be my father, I am not your son. There is the confusion of the demonic system here. Tan Tan angrily retorted. You think it's suitable? Damn it. Are you insulting me? Do you think I want to be old? Black aura appeared on his face as he exclaimed in shock. In actual fact, he didn't show any signs of defeat at the moment. However, he knew very well that if he were to really continue fighting, he would definitely be no match for him, and his life would be in danger. The countenances of the people behind him all became unusually grim. It wasn't strange that the newcomer was a heavenly demon. They had already guessed this beforehand. However, the fact that a heavenly demon was actually this powerful was something that no one could imagine. TSK, it's me. The heavenly demon smiled smugly. Step back. Tan Tan's countenance turned solemn. He said, I'll test him out. Although it was just this one exchange of blows, Tan Tan already had a judgment that none of them, including himself, was a match for this demon before him. However, victory or defeat would only be known after a fight. He'd rather be beaten to death than be scared to death by someone. To be honest, Tan Tan felt a sense of crisis in his heart right now. Ever since Tan Tan had awakened to his true self, he had never felt such a sense of crisis before. It was a feeling of not being able to completely control his own life and death. It was a very bad feeling. However, the pride and dignity of a king didn't allow him to retreat in the slightest. Besides, he still had too many trump cards in his hands. Tan Tan was also confident that even if he were to be defeated in the end, it wouldn't be too tragic. Besides, how could he not fight when faced with such a strong opponent? At the thought of this, Tan Tan was rather speechless. Although his current strength had already reached the peak, he actually still hadn't truly recovered to the peak state of his previous life. Otherwise, why would he feel so stifled? He would have gone to give that bullshit heavenly demon a good thrashing this morning. Be careful, Saint King. You mustn't be careless. All the elders said in unison. Even Guigu wasn't a match for the other party. If the Saint King were to fight personally, the outcome was really not optimistic. When the heavenly demon saw that Tan Tan was going to fight personally, he clearly became excited. His entire body actually trembled a little. Black aura flickered in his eyes, and he was overjoyed. He chuckled and said, All right. Let me have a taste of this supreme demonic body of yours. Tan Tan let out a strange cry. His body had already turned into a strong gust of wind as he charged forward fiercely. He swung his fist and said, Watch how I beat you up, you brat. The heavenly demon didn't dodge or evade. He took a step forward and similarly threw out a punch. Boom. The two fists collided head-on without any tricks. Chi-chi, dense black aura emerged from both fists at the same time. The heavenly demon's fists were overflowing with dense demonic aura that was pitch black like ink. On the other hand, the force on Tan Tan's fists was a kind of aura that was so black that it shone brightly. The heavenly demon's demonic aura was filled with an extremely evil aura. However, Tan Tan's black aura was completely dark. That was a kind of feeling that was even darker than the night. It was a darkness that seemed to want to engulf and shield everything. As the two fists clashed, the heavenly demon's body only swayed slightly before it immediately stopped. An expression of extreme surprise and astonishment actually appeared on its face. It was clearly an expression of joy that was beyond one's imagination. On the other hand, Tan Tan's entire body swayed and staggered for a full 30 feet. Then, he reluctantly stopped his footsteps. The expression on his face had become exceptionally heavy, cautious, and solemn. The heavenly demon was confident in his cultivation. So it could be said that he was confident in his victory in this fight. However, the purpose of his previous attack was to feel out Tan Tan's bottom line, so that it would be convenient for him to take action later. After all, he didn't wish to obtain a broken and incomplete supreme demonic body. However, Tan Tan was also aware of his status. He wasn't willing to be at a disadvantage, so he wanted to feel out the true limits of his opponent. Both of them had come to a conclusion after that punch. This guy possessed the supreme demonic body. However, it seemed that he hadn't unearthed the true mysteries of the supreme demonic body. So he hadn't even displayed its true might. The heavenly demon's heart had settled down after he had obtained this confirmation. He looked at Tan Tan, with an even stranger look in his eyes. In fact, he was faintly revealing an urge to possess Tan Tan's body. This guy's cultivation is indeed higher than mine. In fact, it's much higher than mine. But his devil energy is unexpectedly heterogeneous and impure. It's brimming with a kind of demonic and heterodox feeling. This is a flaw that I can take advantage of. My devil energy is much purer than his. So it's almost meaningless to compare. However, it's the other way around in terms of quantity. I'm at a complete disadvantage in terms of comprehensive strength. So my chances of victory are slim. Therefore, I can only slowly think of a backup plan. Tan Tan Xian had already thought of retreating. There was no other reason than that this opponent was too dreadful. He knew that he wouldn't have any chance of victory if he were to force himself into a fight. After all, he wasn't a match for him. The heavenly demon's cultivation was higher than Tan Tan's. So he had obviously confirmed this earlier. Moreover, he had clearly understood Tan Tan's thoughts. So, how could he allow him to escape? Chapter 1641. After a while, two figures suddenly appeared in the sky, as if they had materialized out of thin air. With the appearance of these two people, boundless pressure and majesty appeared. That was the confidence of the law enforcers for 10,000 years, a kind of awe-inspiring righteousness. But at this moment, this confidence transformed into a strange and domineering special aura. It made people feel extremely uncomfortable. The two of them stared down coldly with 4 pairs of eyes. The next moment, 2 black lights shot up into the sky, one on the left and one on the right, sweeping over. Clang, 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 clang below. Countless long swords suddenly left their sheaths spontaneously, shining brightly. Countless people were shocked to see their swords leave their sheaths spontaneously, and a thought came to their minds. Then, they were completely shocked by this thought, and they blurted out, "Sword supremacy!" Almost at the same time, countless sabers also let out long cries and left their sheaths. They were almost half a foot long. This meant that besides the sword supremacy, there was also the saber supremacy. Facing the strong attack of the law enforcers, a saber and a sword supremacy faced it head-on. In midair, 4 powerful supreme martial artist auras clashed and collided with each other, gradually scattering in all directions. Rings of powerful auras continued to spread out in an unbridled manner. Down below, almost everyone was trembling because of the sudden powerful aura. Being suppressed by such an aura, everyone felt as if the end of the world had arrived. Perhaps at this moment, or perhaps at the next moment, they would die. Are you here to kidnap people? Since you're here, why don't you report your name? Otherwise you'll die without a name. A high-grade supreme martial artist shouted coldly, his words full of strong murderous intent. Gu Duxing smiled coldly and said, "For tens of thousands of years, the law enforcers have always been the most powerful helpers of the tribulation sword master. Who would have thought that today, when the heavenly demon is wreaking havoc, you would be the first to jump out and rebel against the heavens? Are you willing to become the slaves of the heavenly demon so willingly?" The expression on the high-grade supreme martial artist's face didn't change at all, but the black gas in his eyes suddenly surged out. He said coldly, "I'm Ghost Sword Duan Tiansong. My sword has dominated the heavens, and I've never killed a nobody. I advise you to tell me your name. You don't mind walking without a name. I still care about the record of killing a tribulation, but I don't know which tribulation was killed." The other shorter one laughed strangely and said, "I am the demonic saber ancestor, he. I don't care if I know your names or not. You are just people who are about to die." At this moment in the crowd below, there was a commotion.